So we've learned over time that there's cultural things you can do that really help. So the organic method, I guess, is not a do-nothing method. There's definitely products that you can use. We have some insecticides that are either plant-derived or biological. Everyone has heard about BT corn. That obviously is a genetically modified version of the BT. And we don't use any genetically modified organisms in organics. However, the naturally derived bacterium, BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis, is a really valuable insecticide for organics. And we use this, it's a powdered form of this bacterium. And if you mix it with water, it can be sprayed on to your cole crops. So all the brassica plants, cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower. And it does amazingly well. Basically, you want to use products that are approved, and generally they're not made in a lab. They're usually naturally derived. We use a lot of cultural practices, I guess I would say. If you can't keep critters off with a chemical, one of the things that we do is floating row covers, for example. So we give them a barrier that they can't go through, and they're floating covers that we purchase that allow air, light, and water to go through the fabric at varying degrees of, for example, light goes through really well. Water doesn't go through all that well, so we tend to do drip underneath these covers. And the biggest problem we have with these covers, even though they keep the bugs out really well, is heat buildup in the summer. So, you have to mess around with things like a higher hoop so that there's more airflow through the space that's underneath this. We've noticed if it's too low and too close to the ground, the plants underneath really suffer in the summer. If you have a higher hoop, then there's more airflow. We do things like mowing all the high vegetation around new plantings to keep grasshoppers off, because grasshoppers really like to find a high spot to kind of look out over their world. And if you don't have any high growing weeds or plants close to your new crop of lettuce or spinach or whatever you're trying to bring up, usually the grasshoppers won't go to those areas. So what we try to do is really mow first before we till up the ground. We mow everything down so it's really low. And then those grasshoppers tend to leave that area alone. Well, when we started, we basically took our experience from California, and we saw what was selling at farmers markets there, and it was a lot of the gourmet specialty type things. So the salad mixes and arugula and radicchio and kind of the foo-foo veggies, as we like to call them. And so that's what we knew, and we came back to Nebraska and started doing those things. Of course, a lot of people didn't even know what those crops were when we first moved back. But as time has gone by, people have traveled, and that type of cuisine has become real popular. And so we've always kept doing those, and I think we're known for our salad mixes predominantly. And sometimes we get a little tired of growing those because they're very labor intensive, but they're so popular and people line up to buy them, so we can't really stop either. So we always add little things, new things that we've seen or heard about at conferences, or people tell us about a vegetable they had while they were in Italy. We'll try things like that, and if they seem like, if they're well received, then we'll continue growing them. And also if they're easy enough to grow. People are realizing that if they know the face of the farmer, they feel like that is definitely a safer way to buy food, because if you can look the person in the eye and say, so how did you produce this? What products did you use? And if they're going to come back every week, they know they're going to see you again, it's very unlikely that they're going to take a risk that would hurt you or your family. And that kind of security is, really a wonderful, it helps us both, I guess. Right.